Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a quick little knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new QSP Penguin button lock. If you're not familiar with the QSP Penguin, it's still in 2023, and depending on when you're watching, you might be watching this in 2024, depends on when I scheduled it. It's still one of the very best budget knives in existence. I mean, dollar for dollar, it is just amazing. I am going to link this, the new button lock version, and the original plain Jane liner lock version right down in the description, so you guys can check them out if you want to. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to QSP for providing this knife for review. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This newer version does come with a couple of upgrades depending on how you look at it. I've been carrying this knife on and off in rotation for the last week, and I like it. I really, really liked it when I unboxed it, and I still like it. There's just a couple of things that I noticed as I was carrying it, so I'm going to go over that with you guys. But overall, this should be a pretty quick review because it's still the QSP, Penguin. Not a lot different here. Overall length coming in at about 7 inches. I feel like that's the same as the original. Maybe I'm wrong. 3 1/8 on the blade length and 2.85 on the cutting edge. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Custom scales found in this section can be also found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. Much closer, of course, to the 8020.5. And honestly, I don't think we need to do a whole lot. Let's just do the Benchmade Group Tillionaire, in this case the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca, which is also about the same as the Benchmade Bug Out. I think you guys, get it. QSP, how's the action? QSP does overall quality very, very well. QSP has very, very good manufacturing quality. These knives are made in China. You probably knew that, but if you didn't know it, it's made in China. When I unboxed this, I did a super, a crazy spine whack test with my metal gauntlet. So if you want to go back and watch that, you can. I'm not going to do that in this video, but it survived. The button lock is very good. You can press as hard as you want. It's going to fall every single time. So no drag or anything like that, which is something that I really like. I like to just be able to push it and have it fall. Thumb stud action is all right. Thumb studs are a little bit small, but they're okay. Right, it's the same thing, honestly, with the standard one. And the flipper tab is good if you light switch it. I found every time I got this out, I kind of went to flip it. The detent is good, and the detent is the plunge lock. I mean, this is literally a plunge lock acting as the detent. It's hard to kind of see. Maybe we can see it better if we lock it out. See how that works right there? That's what's acting as the detent. I actually did a really good job with that. You get some nice pull. The problem is that the flipper tab is this pokey triangle. It's okay, but I find myself wanting to approach it kind of down and at an angle, and it just kind of is uncomfortable. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't make me so owie that I need to go to the hospital, right? It's just kind of annoying. I kind of wish that it was just a different shape. It's okay. And I'm just saying, like, it should be a relief to the thumb studs, and it's honestly not a whole lot better. The thumb studs are okay. If I was going to give either mechanism a letter grade, I'd give them a C+, a B-. The action itself and quality of action, pivot smoothness, that's all really great. D10 is really great. It's just those two things. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3, it's kind of thick. I feel like the original wasn't so thick. The liners are nested. It's really interesting to me that the scales are so thick. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not like Medford thick. It's just thicker than I would have expected. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This guy is a little bit shorter than the PM2 and Para 3. I'm sorry, than the Para 3. Nowhere near as tall this way, even with that hump right there, and it's nowhere near the same size overall as the PM2. Honestly, it just kind of disappeared in my pocket. Even though the scales are a little thick, it wasn't really that big of a deal. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. We're going to start off here with a T8 because that is almost certainly what the pivot is, and yep, I'm right. Body screws are still T6. Filler tab screws and pocket clip screws are all T6. I do like that they offered a mountable position for the pocket clip on the left-handed side. For lefties, you can still use this. You're just going to be using your index finger to actuate the lock or disengage the lock, and that's not really that big of a deal. It's a very easy knife to manipulate. Since there's not really a choke-up spot, I mean, there is kind of right here, but you really aren't going to have to worry about accidentally disengaging that button lock. Sometimes this is an issue for left-handed people operating a right-handed button lock, but it's not the case here. Let's go ahead and weigh it. What are we looking at for materials? G10 nested milled steel liners and 14C28N for the blade, which is one of the upgrades, depending on how you compare it with D2. That's the original steel. One of the upgrades for this model. It certainly is a more expensive composition. The weight comes in at 3.49 ounces, which is not a perfect balance, right? The balance, by the way, is right behind the pivot. But it's not a perfect ratio, I guess. But honestly, I don't really care. I don't think most people will. 3.49 ounces is just fine. Blade stock thickness, I bet you it's about the same as the original. I couldn't imagine them changing that. But then again, I think maybe they changed the original scale stock thickness. But it's hard to say. I've given all of my QSP Penguins away. This is 117 thousandths or so. I believe that's what the original was. Moving on to the meat and potatoes here. This is still the QSP Penguin. It still feels like the QSP Penguin, except for being slightly thicker. And it is still a very good EDC knife. We have a straight edge, sheep's footy, worn, cliffy, kind of whatever you want to call that, right? Go ahead and give me the full history down in the comment section. Just type me up a big book. I won't read it, but if you want to type it up for somebody else, you can. That's the blade shape we're looking at. This is very good for day-to-day stuff. This is the type of blade I like. Draw cuts, little shaping cuts, things like that. And it'll still slice and get into boxes. 14C28N. If heat treated properly versus the exact same geometry with D2, which is the original steel it comes in, will not outshine D2 in terms of edge retention, but it is a better balance overall. It is stainless. It's definitely easier to touch up. And it's very, very reasonably tough, right? This is generally considered a better steel than D2. In fact, it's considered one of the very best compositions you can get at this price point. So I think that's fine. One of the best things about the Penguin, though, is the price tag. I mean, you can still get that knife for $32.95 or something like that. It's very, very inexpensive. This one is still a budget knife, but quite a bit more expensive. And I feel like because of that, you know, we trade out D2 for 14C28N, which is better, but then you look at the price tag and go, oh, do I really want the Penguin that bad, right? That's really what this is all culminating to. So using it, it was hardly any different than using the original Penguin. I wanted to use the flipper tab, and the flipper tab was just kind of disappointing, but it's okay, right? That shouldn't be a deal breaker. As per usual, overall fit and finish, overall quality, extremely good. Typical QSP. I love their stonewashed finish. I think it looks really, really nice, right? There's a nice flat here, nice little swedge up here on the nose of the blade. I guess that's what we're going to call it. It says QSP on one side. On the other side, it's just 14C28N. No codes or anything like that. Really just fine. The button lock also does not have an enormous amount of travel. It's got this little kind of circle milled into it. That's fine. So you just push it. It disengages. It does exactly what you want it to do. There's no catch. There's no drag. There's no stick or anything like that. It's honestly just fine. They did a filler tab right here, and I think that that's also okay. The G10 is peel ply textured. Again, I think that's just fine. There's really nothing crazy or overcomplicated going on here. It's just sort of run-of-the-mill stuff. I think maybe they could have dressed up. Maybe they will, or they are currently dressing up the scales a little more, but there's just not really a whole lot going on here. It doesn't need to be. It's the QSP Penguin, but, when we get to the final price tag. The lanyard hole is a lanyard hole. It's there if you want to use it. Great. It's got a couple of standoffs. The pocket clip is just fantastic. I love this pocket clip nested into the frame, and even the screws are, for the most part, nested in and out of the pocket. It's a breeze, even running over the peel ply texture G10. It's not really that grip. It's kind of a medium, light medium texturing. There's a stop pin located in its usual spot. A little bit of shouldering here. No blade play up, down, left, or right, and it runs on bearings. Which I think you guys probably could have guessed. There is no button stick. There's no pivot lash. Extremely smooth and consistent. And it's one thing they really kept consistent between this and the original model. And again, nice detent with truly perfect centering and no detent lash. So on QSP's website, this guy's coming in about $64. Now that's a pretty typical markup for 14C28N. Then again, the QSP Penguin is so unbelievably simple, right? It's just kind of contrasting with the original. Like, what do you want it that badly? Do you want the button lock flipper feature combined with 14C28N on the QSP button lock badly enough to pay that additional amount? Now, here's the other thing. That's on QSP's website at the time of this review, right? When you guys see this, even if you're the very first person to watch this the moment it drops, I still recorded it about 2.5 weeks back, at least 2.5 weeks back. That's all my content's pre-recorded. At the time of this recording, it's not available on any other retailers yet, but I'm certain it will be. When that happens, it could be $5 less, maybe even $10 less. If it was $55, I'd say, hey, I think that's pretty good. Then again, it's just $10, right? So maybe I'm crying about nothing here. It's just really hard to truly justify this. This is who this is for. If you picked up, it's pretty straightforward. If you picked up the original QSP Penguin, you're like, man, I love this knife for like $32. It's so good. But by golly, I wish it had a flipper tab, a button lock, and 14T28 end steel, and then I would literally pay double for it. If that's you, buy this because you'll absolutely love it. And it is a good knife. Honestly, it was fine. It did everything I needed it to do. I trust the quality here. The overall execution of the knife is just really good, right? It's just... I'm not sure. It's kind of like when they made this out of S35 yen and titanium and M390. I was like, wow, well, do we need that? I don't know, right? So for some people, yes, right? For everybody, I don't know. I mean, it's really not that much. I mean, yeah, it's double, but double in this case is literally $32. It's still a budget knife. If you've never picked up the QSP Penguin, maybe, depending on what you like, you might be, interested in this one. If you already have the original QSP Penguin, this probably, you probably don't need to upgrade, right? It's not really an upgrade. It's more of a sidestep that costs more money. So it's really up to you. It's okay though, and it still is an inexpensive knife that I like. So I'm going to put it in that playlist. It's going to go in my cheap knives I like playlist because genuinely that's what I think about it. I don't think the price is terrible. It's just kind of comparing it to the original. If this hasn't wowed you, just look at the original QSP Penguin. I mean, again, the thing is so cheap, and it's a really good knife. I think I've given away locally more QSP Penguins than almost any other knife. It just makes an excellent gift. So that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. There's really nothing else to say. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.